and welcome to Women of the South Bay. I am your host, Cathy Alessandra.
And I'm your co-host, Bibi Goldstein. And today we are so excited. I get to sit here and talk to a dear friend, Cindy Hoag, who is one of the managing partners here at Los Angeles Ale Works. Mm-hmm. Cindy, we're just going to start a little bit with, if you could just give us a little bit of history about your background and just how you ended up here.
Okay. My professional background started after college. I worked for a publishing company in sales. Then I worked in banking for a little while in Chicago. And when my husband and I moved to California, I remembered how fun that publishing job was, and I got back into that. And I left the sales side after I had my first child and was an editor of rhetoric textbooks. And I loved it. I absolutely thought that this was the thing I wanted to do the rest of my life. And then publishing.
What is a rhetoric textbook? I'm sorry.
Rhetoric book. If you read it, it will tell you how to become a better writer. It's a book about writing, basically. Okay. I was on the English side, so I can't remember all the books, but those are my favorite. And publishing changed, and I could not change with it because we were not about to relocate, and I didn't want to go back out into the field selling. So I retired from that, which one of my former colleagues calls rewiring. So I chose to stay home with the kids, and as you know, that lasted about a hot minute because I became involved in the community, which I enjoyed thoroughly, and I met some fine people, and I started Beach Cities Friends and worked heavily with Habitat for Humanity, and I still am working with Habitat. Helped my husband, who was on the board at Vistamar School, launch that project in El Segundo. Did some fundraising with them. And I guess that brings us to about 5 years ago when we had the opportunity to invest in Los Angeles Ale Works, and I started doing projects for the brewery, and then just started showing up here a lot more and getting more projects. And here I am 5 years later. It went really fast, almost 5 years later. We'll have our anniversary in February.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow. So I know you personally, and so I know that you're a big wine person. Mm-hmm. What's the big switch for you in wine and beer?
Well, I would go back to my husband again. He loves to come home and cook and create, and making wine was one of those projects that he took on, and enjoyed it thoroughly. But wine, as you know, takes months, if not years, mm-hmm. and beer's just a lot faster. So honestly,
instant gratification. It's all about the instant gratification.
I am honestly not much of a beer drinker. My body doesn't, love it. I, get on the scale the next day, and I don't know, it's like eating a loaf of bread for me or something. So there are certain styles that I enjoy, but overall, I don't. But that's I guess, how we got into it. And a colleague hooked him up with the people who came up with the idea and the concept for LA Ale Works. And so it really has to do with David, and then he kind of handed it over
to you. That's great.
Absolutely. I love it. This is such a great place. You can see everything behind us here, and I'm sure we'll get a little tour afterwards. But so some of the things you were talking about, you're clearly been very strong in the South Bay community, right? One of our taglines here is all about women in leadership, and what they're doing, and whether you're leading here or whether you're leading at Vistamar. Tell me a little bit about some of your leadership experiences here, and what has really made an impact on you here in the South Bay with that.
I don't know if I would call myself a leader. I think I've surrounded myself with leaders. I was enthusiastically supporting Vistamar. In no way, was I involved in starting it. As a couple, we were involved at the beginning. One of my best friends is Amy Hellworth. I would absolutely put her in that category, and Ellen Rosenberg, and people who have had elected positions, I guess. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I enjoy, I don't know how to put it, I guess seeing improvement and social change and a community bettering itself. So I guess my energy always wants to gravitate towards help me here. Yeah.
Well, and I will say that just because I know you, I think that it's always hard for us as women. We have this tendency to downplay the roles that we play. And this is something that I think is super important because Cindy has, as she refers to it, retired. When she retired, she was still a very, very active person. And in that community, you say that you weren't necessarily a leader, but I remember quite a few silent auctions that you ran. I remember quite a few things that you were the person that everyone was looking to for guidance. And in my mind, that's leadership.
I'll take
Absolutely.
it. Okay.
So I think that, and let's not downplay what it takes to run a household either, right? I think that this concept and this idea that you get into of I decided to stay home with the kids.
I totally agree, and I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it and articulate it. I mean, my household is a really unique household.
It is.
3 exchange students. It's a revolving door of guests, long-term guests, short-term guests. I mean, we've probably had 25 young adults transition. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from here. I'm in Michigan. And a lot of my friends, friends of friends, several I've never even met. Hospitality is very important to me, and I've opened our doors and helped people launch, many of whom are still in LA, and I still I just love that age group, the 20-somethings, and I think that's what energizes me about working here. I love I think I'm the second oldest employee. We just had a recent hire, but I loved being the oldest employee. Truly, I really did. Keeps me young. I learned all about Google and Excel, and
that's awesome.
I had to eat a little humble pie a few times with what I didn't know, but what I do know are some of the intangibles that I share with staff about all kinds of things, just decision making and getting along, and things that are you can't take maybe a class in, but they have value, so much value, and that I am confident in.
Well, and you clearly enjoy people. And I've known that for a long time, and I think that it's important for our viewers to understand that, there's a lot of people in this world who don't. They're really successful, but they don't necessarily enjoy people. And you are a very social person from that aspect, and a very inquisitive person. So I'm curious, just in that realm, because you've had that opportunity, tell us a little bit about some of those things that do bring you joy. Personal life, family, what are those things that bring you joy?
I thought that was one of the questions you sent me beforehand, and I thought about this, and I was just laughing as I thought about it because it's different every day, and that kind of describes me. And I'm not going to apologize, for that. I'm married to someone who's very consistent and very, stable, and I think that's why our marriage is so fun and vibrant. Is that we just complement each other really well. So what brings me joy? One day it might be, gardening, or being, earthing as we call it. I'll just feel my body and my mind wanting to be outside. And I guess I'm experienced enough to wake up and kind of sense what is going to nourish me today. And am my mind sharp? And even the hours of the day, I've studied that, and I have this little project I love to do with my employees on productivity. And so joy, to answer your question, some days it's getting my to-do list done, and other days it's, going to the beach and getting on the phone and calling, my mom and my sister, and just filling my soul with that. It brings me joy. Obviously, laughing brings me joy. Connecting brings me joy. Being in the kitchen, we cook a lot, and creating, if I'm stressed, I will go to the store and buy bolognese ingredients and just sit myself at the stove for 3 hours and know that I know myself well enough to know, what my mind and body need. But that's going to stick with me for a while, because, I have a friend and we pick a word every year, and almost every other year we, something that has to do with joy kind of bubbles up.
It's important.
Mhm.
I think that joy, when it comes to those of us who are a little type A, would you say? Maybe just a tad. A little type A, like what are those things? Where are those moments, that you can fill your soul, as you said? I love that phrase. I think that finding those opportunities to really sit there and go, oh, like, I feel joyful without even recognizing that I'm in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you even said it's changing day by day, right? And that just goes to being present in our lives.
Which
right?
I'm glad you brought up that word, and the questions you sent me made me think about that, and that is something I have thought about and studied and worked on the last probably 10 years. I'm from the Midwest, and we love to work and show up and grind, I guess, and that's not necessarily healthy. And I had a period in my life where, my body was not loving the stress levels I was putting it under, and I knew every morning during that period when I woke up and unhappy words filled my. I'm not going to tell you what they were, but there was one in particular that I would just wake up and put my feet on the ground, and I knew I had to work on finding my joy, and a lot of it was staying present, because I was constantly. I had colleagues in my 20s like kind of tease me about how much I talked about planning, and the next day and the next week and the next month. And I remember distinctly a lunch that I had with some colleagues in my 20s, and they're like, what is up with you? Like, we've never met a young person who has like her 15-year plan already. I'm like, sorry, it's me. So I've, been dialing that back. It's something that I kind of already had, and now I'm undoing those knots and untying them. And it feels good. I wish I had done it earlier, but I'm glad that now I can recognize what that is, instead of letting it kind of stir in a pot of kind of frustration and unhappiness. So,
well, and I think that for so many people, spontaneity and the idea of spontaneity doesn't necessarily create joy. It creates anxiety. Mm-hmm. And for other people, there are days that I wish that I didn't have anything on my calendar, and that I could just like sit around and do nothing, or decide at that moment that I want to sit and bake a cake.
Or make bolognese.
Or make bolognese, yes. Whatever that happens to be, right? But it's finding those pieces and those moments of inspiration, right? And if you have too many things planned out, as my wonderful friend Cathy likes to say, that there's no room for inspiration. There's no room to create and having that space.
And the list never ends. And someone like myself, who for a very long time has had to plan my schedule, decide on what to execute, and prioritize, you're kind of beating yourself up all the time if you don't plan rest and rewards. And I have learned that rewards are, I was a psychology major, and it's not rocket science that we need rewards. I just didn't allow myself. I thought maybe either I was exceptional or that was for other people, or I don't know. But once I started planning that, I realized how important it is.
Interesting. So let me ask you this. We talk about having revelations and realizations, right, as we've grown. When you look back on, the past and all that you've been involved in raising kids and coming into this business and everything, is there something that you regret, or something that you wish you would have done differently, or that you would tell your younger self?
We talked about this earlier, and this is one of the questions that was giving me a little bit of worry. But I think we nailed it in our conversation, and I would say that period in my 20s and 30s where I guess I just beat myself up when things weren't perfect, and I also did that. I kept looking ahead instead of at that day's work and that day's joy and that day's literally snapshot of that day in your head. Sometimes when I look through photos, and I'm sure this is true for all of us, we're like, oh, I remember the memory of that day and the details of that day come flooding back. And without those photos, I don't know that I feel like I'm missing chapters of my life because I was kind of on a little treadmill. Moments in my life.
Being present.
And I'm telling you, mindfulness, it's coming to vogue. But I support that wholeheartedly. And to take those deep breaths and put your hands on your chest, I think just is something I missed. And I guess that's a regret, is I was kind of running and catching up and I didn't understand. I did for a point in time when the kids, I think, were really tiny, and because you had to just be in the moment because there were diapers and one kid's waking up and the other one kids needed to go down, and it forced me to be really, really present. So I think that did change things, but it took me a long time to learn.
So you mentioned now that you're from Michigan. You lived in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
You came to the South Bay when?
In 1991, so 30 years ago.
30 years ago. Wow. And I remember how much you loved that first little house.
My heart home.
Your heart home in Manhattan Beach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what you love about the South Bay.
Well, we lived on the west side for a little bit. So I immediately we gravitated towards the extra space, having a yard, which is what we were used to. I grew up on 3 acres, and I think my husband grew up on like 100 acres.
Midwest.
That they leased to a farmer. So we just needed, the outside of the house was as or more important than the number of rooms inside the house. So I loved just a little more elbow room, and just being able to go downtown Manhattan Beach, either in a baseball hat and a sweatshirt, or like in some, little bit more fancy outfit, but just the range of people not, I don't know, dressing up too much or feeling the need to, look at me, here I am in a t-shirt and I'm feeling great.
That's always been a thing in the South Bay where they talk about where you go from beachy to beachy bougie.
Oh, thank you for
beachy bougie.
Okay, so here I am talking circles around it. I didn't know there was a phrase.
I didn't either. I learned something new there.
Okay, that's it. You nailed it. So I like beachy bougie, I guess. And I, there are people from all over the country that have landed there, and it's enriching. And my kids, Alex still lives in the South Bay, and Natalie's not too far away. They feel so rooted there, and the schools, are excellent. The list goes on. The food scene has now become great. God forbid I go to Hermosa or El Segundo to eat, right? It's so far away.
It's interesting how even those thin veils between Redondo, Hermosa, and Manhattan actually exist, right? No, but they do. I think that it's actually a very real thing. I think there's many people who, I know that when we lived in North Redondo, we spent a lot of time in Hermosa. Now when we live in South Redondo, we spend a lot more time in South Redondo and PV, where we wouldn't necessarily do that before. So I think that even within the South Bay, those things are there. It's not that someone doesn't like going there. It's just you just get very.
Let me tell you, it's a huge night out when we go from Palos Verdes all the way down to Manhattan Beach. It is a big night out. Let me tell you, might as well be downtown.
It's nice to be able to walk around too, and I enjoyed that my kids could walk or bike to their friends' houses.
Well, and you're in that border of Hermosa and Manhattan too, So I know that we, and I've totally enjoyed having this conversation with you, just because I feel like we're catching up. And but tell everybody a little bit about where they can find you, about Los Angeles Ale Works, where it is, why you chose this location, kind of. The
location kind of chose us a little bit based on the warehouse, the size of the building, the price point, and we were the first brewery in Hawthorne. That was important to us. So this is our production facility. The tank's behind us. This is where the beer is made, and our tasting room is out front here. We are opening a second tasting room at Ivy Station in Culver City, and hopefully by the end of November, probably more in December. That's been a project that was very affected by COVID. We were supposed to open in May of 2020. In the retail, We're in Whole Foods, Lazy Acres, Bristol Farms. We're working on some other retail accounts. Probably in 250 bottle shops around around LA. So, you know, if we're not, then please ask your favorite bottle shop if they could carry us. We are in SoFi, just in I think it's in the 6th or 7th. It's such a big stadium. I don't know. I literally walked like 7,000 steps that day from our seats. I went to a preseason game and I got so lost. I found our beer.
So for those of you viewers who may not know what SoFi is, so SoFi is a brand new stadium that's been built here in Inglewood that houses our returning Los Angeles Rams and the newly transitioned Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah. So
they can find you. What's the website?
I haven't got on there myself in so long. www.lalworks, LAALE, and it works, the word works.com.
We will make sure that we get that out
and
there.
Facebook. We have a very lively, fun Instagram account, and our brewery cat also has her own Instagram, Scrapalicious. Her name is Scrappy.
We have a
beer. Every brewery. Well,
I didn't know this was a thing.
Who knew? Breweries tend to have an animal. Lots of them do. I
think it's the wineries have dogs. So
right.
You need a brew cat.
I will say that she's supposed to. We hired her to tackle the infestation of little rodents that tend to like to eat our grain, and I would give her a C-. If I was in charge of her 90-day review, she would not have. But in terms of a Instagram personality, she has made up for that. And we celebrated her 4th birthday last Friday. I was out of town, but she's pretty famous.
Oh my God!
We have a beer named after her, and a lot of people, will take pictures when they're here and then tag us, and then we'll include them in our Instagram feed. She makes everybody feel happy.
Thanks again for joining us this afternoon. I so enjoyed catching up with you. And to our viewers, this has been another episode of Women of the South Bay: Leadership, Lifestyle, and Legacy. Thank you for joining us.